Imagine a world where forbidden knowledge calls softly at night, promising greatness to those brave enough to listen. In the deep forests of southwestern Nigeria, such whispers clung to ancient trees and sacred stones. The elders warned that power taken too quickly always collected a cruel debt. Many ignored those warnings, believing themselves special or chosen. This is where the story of Sadiq Musa begins, a young apprentice with restless ambition. His heart burned brighter than the ritual fires he tended each night. He believed destiny owed him more than patience. That belief would soon tear his world apart. This is not a story about magic. It's a story about ambition, betrayal, and the evil that listens when you're impatient. Hit the subscribe button now, and let's dive into the story. Sadiq Musa served under the feared and respected witch doctor Babura Gunwale. Babura Gunwale was known across villages for speaking with ancestors and commanding unseen forces. People traveled 4 days to seek his protection, cures, and blessings. To Sadiq, his master seemed untouchable, wrapped in mystery and restraint. Every chant Babura Gunwale spoke carried weight and ancient authority. Yet, he always warned that true power demanded balance and sacrifice. Sadiq listened, but his hunger grew silently, or slowly transformed into frustration. Life as an apprentice was filled with discipline and repetition. Sadiq gathered rare herbs before dawn and dried bones under sacred suns. He memorized chants that could heal or curse depending on intent. Each ritual required precision, humility, and respect for ancestral laws. Babura Gunwale watched closely, correcting even the smallest mistake. At night, Sadiq cleaned ritual tools while listening to stories of spirits and old wars. Those stories fascinated him more than the chores. He wanted command, not preparation. The seed of impatience took root. Babura Gunwale's hut held objects forbidden to curious hands. Cowries etched with blood symbols lay hidden beneath carved masks. Scrolls written in faded ink whispered of ancient pacts and sealed evils. Sadiq noticed his master always locking a particular wooden chest. Whenever the chest was near, the air felt heavy and alive. Babura Gunwale warned that some knowledge destroys the unready. Sadiq nodded outwardly while questioning inwardly. Why guard power instead of sharing it? Why slow the inevitable rise of a worthy apprentice? The whispers began after Sadiq's 20th rainy season. He heard them while grinding roots alone at night. They spoke of shortcuts, strength, and destiny denied. The voices claimed Babura Gunwale feared being surpassed. They promised Sadiq greatness without years of waiting. Each whisper chipped away at loyalty. Sadiq started believing that obedience was weakness. He told himself elders feared change. Ambition dressed itself as courage in his mind. One night, curiosity defeated caution. Sadiq waited until Babura Gunwale left to consult a distant village. His hands trembled as he opened the forbidden wooden chest. Inside lay scrolls bound in leather, and a blackened horn pulsing faintly. Symbols crawled across the parchment like living things. Fear battled excitement within him. He felt chosen, powerful, and terrified at once. The ancestors' warnings echoed faintly, then faded. Desire spoke louder than wisdom. 4 days, Sadiq studied the stolen knowledge in secret. The scroll described a ritual older than kingdoms. It promised rapid ascension through communion with a bound entity. The ritual demanded secrecy, blood, and moonlight. It claimed the apprentice would eclipse the master instantly. Sadiq's heart raced with every word. He imagined villagers bowing to him in awe. Loyalty felt small compared to destiny. He convinced himself Babura Gunwale was holding him back. Doubt occasionally surfaced like a drowning man's hand. Sadiq remembered his master's kindness and lessons. Babura Gunwale had saved his life during a fever years before. He had taught him respect for spirits and balance. Yet the scroll mocked such restraint as cowardice, power. It insisted, favored the bold. Sadiq argued with himself through sleepless nights. Each argument ended the same way. Ambition always won. Betrayal slowly became resolve. The night of the ritual arrived beneath a swollen full moon. Sadiq prepared the sacred circle far from the hut. He used powdered bones, herbs, and his own blood. The forest seemed to hold its breath. He recited the forbidden chant with shaking confidence. The air thickened and vibrated around him. Shadows twisted unnaturally across the ground. Fear surged, but excitement drowned it. He felt closer to power than ever before. Energy exploded through Sadiq's body like fire. His vision blurred as voices screamed inside his head. He felt strong, unstoppable, and chosen. Yet beneath the thrill lurked a deep, crawling dread. The earth trembled as something unseen stirred. The ritual circle cracked with unnatural force. Sadiq struggled to maintain control of the chant. Sweat poured as panic crept in. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Far away, Barbaro Gunwale collapsed to his knees. Protective charms around his body shattered instantly. Years of spiritual defenses unraveled like dry leaves. He gasped as a presence tore at his soul. The binding he maintained for decades weakened violently. Barbaro Gunwale understood immediately what had happened. His apprentice had tampered with the seal. Pain burned through him. He tried to contain the breach. Time was slipping away. Back in the forest, Sadiq felt the surge twist into agony. The promised power refused to settle within him. Instead, it ripped outward, searching for another host. The horn cracked and screamed like a living thing. Sadiq realized he was not being empowered. He was being used as a key. Terror replaced ambition in his heart. He screamed for the ritual to stop. The forest answered with silence. Barbaro Gunwale staggered toward the ritual site, despite his weakening body. Each step drained years from his life. When he arrived, the circle was already breaking apart. Dark energy spilled into the night like smoke. Sadiq lay collapsed at the center, trembling. Barbaro Gunwale raised his staff, with what strength remained. He began a counter-chant known only to him. Blood spilled from his mouth as he spoke. The cost was fatal. With his final strength, Barbaro Gunwale forced the truth into the open. He revealed the forbidden's power was not magic, but a Jogan, a parasitic ancient entity. Years ago, Barbaro Gunwale had bound a Jogan within himself. He chose that burden to protect the land and his people. The chest and scrolls existed as warnings, not temptations. He had trained Sadiq to resist such hunger. Sadiq stared in horror as understanding crushed him. His betrayal had freed a monster. A Jogan tore free in a scream that shattered trees. The entity fed on fear, ambition, and broken oaths. Barbaro Gunwale smiled softly at his apprentice. He said true power was sacrifice, not domination. With one final chant, he weakened a Jogan enough to delay destruction. Then his body collapsed into stillness. The forest mourned in silence. Sadiq screamed until his voice broke. Dawn found Sadiq alone beside his master's lifeless body. Guilt pressed heavier than any curse. The voices that once promised greatness now laughed cruelly. A Jogan had escaped into the world, wounded but free. Villages would suffer because of him. Sadiq understood that ambition blinded him. He had mistaken impatience for destiny. Barbaro Gunwale's lessons returned too late. Wisdom arrived only after irreversible loss. News of Barbaro Gunwale's death spread quickly. Elders gathered, sensing a great imbalance. Sacred animals fled the forest in fear. Crops began to rot without cause. Children reported nightmares of a shadow with burning eyes. The elders questioned Sadiq, who confessed everything. Shame stripped him bare before his people. Some demanded his execution. Others believed punishment would not undo the damage. The land itself seemed to wait for judgment. Sadiq chose exile before a verdict could be reached. He believed he had no right to remain. Carrying his master's staff, he left the village at dawn. Each step felt heavier than the last. He vowed to hunt a Jogan and undo his mistake. Redemption became his only reason to breathe. The whispers followed him, mocking and tempting. This time, he resisted. Pain sharpened his resolve. As Sadiq traveled, he saw the damage spreading. Rivers dried overnight without explanation. Hunters vanished in the forests. Entire compounds fell silent under strange curses. Ajogan was growing stronger with every act of fear. Sadiq realized the threat was larger than one village. Barbaro Gunwal's sacrifice had bought only time. The responsibility now rested on the betrayer. He carried guilt like a second skin. There would be no easy forgiveness. Along his journey, Sadiq sought forgotten elders and hidden shrines. Many refused to help him, sensing corruption. Others tested his humility before teaching him. He endured trials meant to break the proud. Hunger, pain, and loneliness reshaped him. Slowly, he learned restraint and discipline. Power gained through suffering felt different. It demanded patience and honesty. The boy who sought shortcuts was dying. At a ruined shrine, Sadiq encountered a vision of Barbaro Gunwal. The vision did not accuse or condemn him. It reminded him that balance could still be restored. Ajogan could be bound again, but at a terrible cost. The binder would never know peace. Sadiq understood the meaning immediately. Redemption required the same sacrifice his master had chosen. Fear threatened to overwhelm him. This time, he accepted it. Sadiq tracked Ajogan to a cursed grove near an abandoned settlement. The air there smelled of decay and despair. He prepared the binding ritual with careful precision. No shortcuts, no forbidden greed guided him now. Each chant honored the ancestors properly. Ajogan sensed the trap and attacked fiercely. Pain ripped through Sadiq's body like fire. He held firm despite the agony. Resolve anchored him where ambition once ruled. The battle between will and hunger shook the grove. Ajogan mocked Sadiq with visions of power. It offered him dominion beyond imagination. Sadiq answered with silence and steady chants. He remembered Barbaro Gunwal's calm discipline. Slowly, the entity weakened. The binding circle glowed with ancestral light. Sadiq screamed as the spirit merged into him. The ritual closed with a thunderous silence. When the dust settled, Ajogan was contained once more. Sadiq collapsed, barely breathing. The land exhaled in relief as balance returned. Crops would recover and rivers would flow again. Sadiq survived, but he was changed forever. The entity clawed constantly at his spirit. Every day would be a battle of will. Power now meant eternal vigilance. There would be no glory in this path. Sadiq returned briefly to his village. The elders sensed the binding within him. They understood the sacrifice he had made. Forgiveness came quietly, without celebration. He refused any title or praise. The staff of Barbaro Gunwal was returned to the shrine. Sadiq did not stay long. He knew peace could never be his again. His duty lay elsewhere. Stories of a wandering guardian spread slowly. Villagers spoke of a silent man who healed and warned. He accepted no payment and stayed nowhere long. Some called him cursed, others blessed. Children said shadows avoided him. He carried sorrow with dignity. Ajogan remained restless, but contained. Sadiq never allowed pride to surface again. Fear kept him humble and alert. Years passed, and the land healed. New witch doctors rose, guided by strict discipline. The forbidden scrolls were destroyed by the elders. Knowledge would now be passed with care. Barbaro Gunwal's story became a lesson taught to apprentices. Ambition without wisdom was the greatest danger. Sadiq listened from afar, unseen. He approved of the change silently. His master's sacrifice was honored at last. At night, Sadiq often spoke to the ancestors. He asked for strength, not power. The whispers still came, but they no longer controlled him. He had learned the true weight of desire. Betrayal had nearly ended everything he loved. Responsibility now defined his existence. The burden was heavy, but deserved. He carried it willingly. Redemption, he learned, was a lifelong path. Ajogan grew quieter as years passed. The entity fed less on fear and more on Sadiq's entrance. Balance slowly stabilized between them. Sadiq understood this was the reward of discipline. Shortcuts had nearly destroyed the world. Patience now preserved it. He remained vigilant, knowing weakness invited catastrophe. His life was a living seal. The land slept safely, because of his watchfulness. Elders sometimes wondered if Sadiq still lived. They felt his presence in protective charms and calm winds. Children slept easier without knowing why. Rivers sang again during rainy seasons. The cost of safety remained unseen. Such was the way of true guardians. Power hidden was often the strongest. Sadiq embraced anonymity as penance. His name faded into myth. In lonely moments, Sadiq remembered his younger self. He mourned the boy who sought glory too quickly. That boy had died in the forest that night. In his place stood a man forged by consequence. Regret never left him, but it guided him wisely. Pain became his teacher. He finally understood Barbaro Gunwal's restraint. Wisdom came wrapped in loss. The land of his birth thrived cautiously. Festivals returned with respectful rituals. Elders emphasized balance in every teaching. Forbidden's power was spoken of only as warning. The mistake of one apprentice reshaped generations. Fear no longer ruled, but awareness did. The ancestors were honored properly again. Sadiq's sacrifice rippled outward unseen. The world endured because lessons were learned. Sometimes, beneath the full moon, Sadiq felt peace. Ajogan slept deeply during those moments. He allowed himself brief rest then. He remembered Barbaro Gunwal's final smile. It was not disappointment, but understanding. That memory steadied him always. Forgiveness, he realized, could exist without forgetting. The past shaped him, but did not define him entirely. Balance had been restored through suffering. The true price of Forbidden's power became clear with time. It was never paid by the seeker alone. Innocence suffered first and most deeply. Betrayal widened cracks that evil eagerly filled. Sadiq carried that truth like a scar. Every choice now weighed heavily. He chose caution where once he chose hunger. The world remained safe because ambition was restrained. That was the lesson etched into his soul. And so the story ends where it began, with a whisper. This time, it warns instead of tempts. Power offered too easily always hides a blade. Trust broken can end worlds. True strength lies in patience, sacrifice, and loyalty. Sadiq Musa walked still, bearing the consequences of his choice. Barbaro Gunwal's legacy lives through vigilance, not dominance. The ancestors watch, and balance holds. Such is the terrifying truth behind Forbidden's power.